Hello. Welcome to the Study Skills Lunch and Learn. My name is Michael Holman. I will be one of your presenters today. I am a psychology instructor full-time here at Lanier Technical College, and I am joined today by my fellow psychology instructor, LaQuaida Ben Walker. Please make sure that you are keeping your mics muted. That way we don't get any background chatter. Also, make sure that you just kind of be mindful because this session is being recorded. So anything that you say in the chat room and anything that's said out loud is going to be recorded for all time. So that's something to just think about. Also, we are keeping roll. So that will help with attendance and things like that. Okay.
Hello, I'm a full-time psychology instructor. We also asked too that if you guys have your cell phones available, that you pull that out. We're going to be doing a Kahoot quiz as well. Also, just so you know, we'll be taking roll. So your name will be copied for your instructor if they're taking any extra credit for this assignment. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the screen for the Kahoot quiz if you guys want to go ahead and open that. So if you don't have the app, you can of course join directly through the website, and that would be the pin, and we'll let you know when we start that. It'll be actually in a few minutes. Okay, and if you didn't get this, of course, we'll have it back up. Okay, so whenever you're ready, Mr. Holman. Okay, sorry guys.
One second, folks. It's being a little rough over here. Technology-wise. Can everyone see the study skills starting page for the slide? All right, cool.
Who was that, Rachel? Get that. Not happening today. Oh, really?
Can you guys hear me now? Sorry about that. Yeah, some technical difficulties over here. Okay, so do any of you put the pro in procrastinate? I have been known to myself. So why do we procrastinate? And believe it or not, it's not always due to being lazy, although that is one of the reasons. But some of the reasons are you're busy working on small tasks because they're easier. It's always easier to do the small things instead of the big things. You don't have any motivation. You get easily distracted. You're not clear on how to get started. And more importantly, you're not prepared. So motivation is what gets you started, but habit is what keeps you going. So how can you avoid procrastinating? What you do is those little things that you know you need to do first before you start your homework, go ahead and get those out of the way. Like preparing a snack, taking a shower, calling a friend. You can do everything that you don't need to do before you do the things you need to do. So instead, what you should try, setting a specific time each week or each day for study, for homework, and stick to it. Cut out one of those rituals each time you need to complete a task for school. Um, Okay, I don't know why my sound keeps going out. So when it comes to, sorry about that, guys, to your little rituals that you often need that interrupt your study time or your homework time, try to put those off until you've actually completed your homework. So you might want to cut out one ritual each time you need to complete a task for school. As I stated, hopefully you heard me. Set a specific time each day to for your schedule and stick to it. You actually have to do that. So next slide, Mr. Holman.
Okay. So something else to keep in mind when you are preparing and getting ready is to think about what kind of a learner you are. We know that there are typically 3 different learning styles, but people can be combinations of these 3. So it's really about knowing what works best for you. Some people are visual learners, so they learn by seeing. So they're great with learning by just reading the book or reading their notes or looking at PowerPoint slides. Maybe that's the way that you can learn really well. You're good at reading stuff and then remembering that information. Auditory learners learn through hearing things. So for you, it's better to just kind of sit, listen, and pay attention to what the teacher is saying. Not so much focus on what's on the board, but more focusing on what they're saying. I know I'm an auditory learner, so that's how I like to learn and remember stuff. Or you could be a tactile learner. We also call it an experiential learner. This is someone that learns by doing. So they're not going to learn from just being told what to do or being shown what to do. They have to do it themselves. So they'll do really well with practice and with getting hands-on in what they need to do. So activities, workshops, those kinds of things. So knowing how you learn best is the very first step in knowing the best way to study. Yeah. And it's good that you all are kind of reflecting on yourselves of what's the best way for you to learn. And again, these are just some different ways that people can study, depending on what your style is. So you can take detailed notes, rewrite your notes, and draw diagrams if you're more of a visual learner. If you're an auditory learner, you can listen to tapes, watch videos, and study aloud. That means reading your notes out to yourself. Or if you're a experiential learner, you can make a model, you can act out the part of a character, maybe from a book that you're reading for English class, or you can perform a task or experiment. There's lots of ways that we can learn.
So a key to, okay, I hear an echo, so somebody needs to mute their mic. Okay, so a key to studying and being prepared, of course, is being organized. So one thing, and I know on day one, this is something I told my students in the virtual classroom. Every course has a syllabus. Always read your syllabus. And I'm going to turn this over to Mr. Holman. So guys, I'm sorry. So as I was stating, if you may or may not have a capability to print, but either way, you should always read your syllabus. If you can print it, that's always a good thing, but always have it handy. If your course has a schedule or a course calendar, definitely open that and print it if you can. If you can't, open it, save it, and have that browser open so you can always check your due dates. One thing I always recommend and suggest is that you maintain a master calendar of your own for your assignments and look at it every day. I'm old school. I actually use the paper planner, the one that you get at CVS. So, and I use that and I put down my important due dates on that one. If you're the person who has the phone, you can use a planner app. But I recommend don't use both because that could probably get you confused. So you would either want to use your one planner or the app, and that avoid any mishaps. Put down your assignment due dates in your planner, even set reminders with tones if need be to schedule the time to have your assignments due. Always plan the beginning of the week if you have the time for the month. If you don't, and by that I mean you sit down and you actually write out the schedule, the times that you're going to go to work, the times that you have for lunch, and literally set out the times of the day that you're going to devote studying and how long and to what subject. Make an assignment list. Write down the due dates of your assignments and keep this with you. For those of you who are going to have this planner app, that will actually work really well on your phone, so you can just pull that out, and especially with alerts. Next slide, please. So when you're making your schedule, this is just a sample of how one could look. Let's say you're taking 3 courses, biology, psychology, and English. Literally for the week, and maybe on a Sunday, Saturday, whatever day you choose to write out your schedule for the week. So Monday, you're going to dedicate this time to study biology. Tuesday, you're actually going to dedicate this time to make notes or do research for your psychology discussion board. Wednesday, you have an hour and a half to dedicate some research time for your English. Thursday, you have this particular time. You literally are going to have to carve out some time every day to accomplish your task, especially with a term paper or a research paper. You will definitely want to plan the research part, making notes, and then rough drafts. So this includes the weekends also, guys. Yeah, because you're in school, got to get it done. You probably will have more time on the weekends. So if that 2 hour mark, if you can even extend that further, that would be even better. Use an hour or so on that Sunday to prepare your next week's schedule and stick to it. A lot of times we don't have time because we haven't really carved out the time to do it. Make sure you adhere to your schedule. You know your schedule better than anyone else. So when you have that free time available, this is when you need to utilize it wisely. Next slide, please. So your weekly school goals by course. This is how it would look if you were to handwrite it in another type of planner. You have your class, you do your homework. This is how it would look. Next slide. Another example of how, even pencil in as far as, yeah, I'm eating breakfast from 7:30 to 8:30. I'm going to work at this particular time. However, you need to do this with your class schedules. And even if you're on campus, whenever we return back, tutoring, every single thing that you need to do, carve out that time and stick to it. Next slide. Note taking.
Okay. So for note taking, this maybe is a little familiar to you. You might have thought something like, I don't need to take notes. I understand it in class. But here's the thing. This is why taking notes is so important. Your memory is not important. Sorry, important. Your memory is not perfect. Anything you are not paying attention to will not be remembered. So in our psychology classes, we talk about this quite a bit. But this is something we found through research. For every second your mind wanders, or you check your phone, you start thinking about your laundry, or what am I going to eat today, for every second in class that you're not paying attention, you are literally losing information. That stuff just goes away, disappears, just doesn't even make it into your brain. Information can be retained in your memory for about 1 minute on average. So the amount of information we can immediately remember is very, very tiny. Information can then be forgotten at a very quick rate, even if you paid attention to every word in class. For example, there was a very famous study that we talk about in our psychology classes by a man named Ebbinghaus. And he came up with something called the classic curve of forgetting. And so what Ebbinghaus did was he had his participants memorize a list of words. And when he asked them to immediately recall them, they got 100% of those words right, which probably sounds a little bit like when you're in class and you're paying attention and everything the teacher is saying is making sense and you're like, oh yeah, I got it. I totally understand this. That's great. But look at this chart. By 20 minutes later, when he asked them to recall the same list they had gotten 100% of correct before, they could only remember about 60% of it. Only 20 minutes had passed. So that's like, you leave your class and then you go to drive home. You've already lost 40% of everything that you understood perfectly in class. By an hour, they had forgotten up to, gosh, what is it? So they'd only remembered like a little over 40%. Less than, at 9 hours, it's less than 40%. And then we start looking at days, and you can see that that curve is just getting lower and lower and lower. So you will forget things as the days go on. And now think about this. Even if you totally get it in class, and it makes perfect sense to you, everything, you understand it perfectly fine in class, that exam is probably not going to be that same day. So it's going to be what, maybe a week, 2 weeks away, maybe 4 weeks away, something like that. Well, check this out. By 31 days, it seems the best is about a little over 20% that you still remember. That is why it's important to take notes. And with that in mind, we have a little activity for you. Remember that Kahoot screen that we were showing earlier? It's back. So make sure you get your phones out. And if you haven't logged into Kahoot, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing my screen. And Ms. Ben Walker is going to take over on the Kahoot screen part for those of you that hadn't gotten that yet.
Okay, so guys, we want to, okay, I'm hearing an echo, but okay.
Oh, that's me.
We're going to test. Your knowledge of what you've paid attention so far. So we're going to give you guys a few minutes to join. You can see the pin. And we have a few questions to see what type of learners you were, how closely you paid attention. You're going to have a little quiz on what we've gone over so far. Okay. I'm not sure what the capacity is, so we'll start here in a minute. Okay. I don't think all of us will be able to play, but that's okay, guys. You just play along. So we're going to go ahead and start. Good luck.
Okay, so which one of the following is not one of the little rituals of procrastination? Is it prepare a snack, setting a specific time to study, call a friend, or check your social media? Which one is not one of those? All right, correct answer was set a specific time to study. Looks like most of you got that. Great.
Nice. Okay. Just having some technical difficulties here, guys. 1 second. Okay. Nice, Sarah. Okay. Next question. A visual learner. Where did it go? A visual learner learns best by watching videos. True or false? I think that was incorrect. That should be true. Sorry, guys. Okay, Sarah still.
Okay, I'll take this one. Information can be retained in your short-term memory for about 1 minute on average. True or false? Bum, ba-dum, bum. Bum, ba-dum, bum. All right, so most of you got that one good as well. So about 29 of you said that that was true. Very good. Y'all got to catch up to Sarah now.
Like, really? Next question. Which of these is not the best method of organization? Writing down assignment due dates, printing the course syllabus calendar, using a planner or a planner app, or completing assignments when you have free time. That was fast. Okay, right. Completing assignments when you have free time. That's not the best method of organization. Very nice, guys. Sarah, nice job. Nice job, Lance. Nice job, Ha. Very nice. Okay, Mr. Holman, I think we are now ready for.
Yep, let's keep it moving. All right. So now that we've kind of practiced ourselves a little bit and we were able to use our short-term memories to good use for that little quiz, let's see how we can burn that information into our long-term memory. So how do we take those good notes? Number one is to pay attention to what your instructor says and does, such as writing on the board or repeating information. If I take the time out of my day to write something on the board, or in this case, since we're doing stuff virtually right now, to write it out in Blackboard Collaborate or something like that, it is probably something important. It is probably something that I want you to remember. It is probably something you will see again on something that is going to be graded. Number two, if possible, do some work before class. This might be reading the chapter ahead of time or looking at a set of math problems to just kind of get you in the zone. We call it priming the brain. It gets you to be a little bit more familiar with the topic going in. That is a really great way to just get you thinking about psychology or thinking about math or English or anything like that, just to switch you into that student mode. Number three, when taking notes, write in your own words. This reinforces understanding of the topic and strengthens your memory. If you write everything that I say in my words, those aren't yours. They're my words. And so they don't mean as much to you. So it's important that you write down the stuff that we're teaching you in a way that makes sense to you. It's not just your handwriting, it's how you understand it. So what's the best way for you to do it? You know, I could tell you to write down the definition for a SSRI and even tell you that it's a selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. What the heck does that mean? But if maybe when I say an SSRI is Paxil, that might be something that you remember. So it's all about helping you to understand the notes that you're taking. If you just write stuff word for word, you might as well be writing in hieroglyphics a lot of times. Here's some common mistakes that students make when taking notes. Number one is that students will try to write down every single thing that the teacher says without actually listening. When you're writing notes, it's important that you be short and right to the point. When you're taking notes, students often will not think about the topics that their teachers are saying. It's important to take notes in order to remember ideas, sure, but it's more important to understand those new complex ideas that are being introduced to you. Notes don't do you any good whatsoever if you don't understand what they're talking about. And also, here's a big one. Students don't ask questions while the teacher is lecturing when the ideas are fresh in their minds. A lot of you probably are thinking, oh, well, I'm just going to be polite and I'm not going to say anything. But if you're confused, odds are someone else is also confused. So if you raise your hand in class, or if you speak up online, if you're in a virtual class right now, then you're not just doing yourself a favor, you're probably helping someone else that also is maybe being polite or is too shy to say anything. So ask questions. I can tell you, as a teacher, I love it when you ask questions. It's my favorite thing. I look forward to classes where students will ask questions. We're teachers, we're here to teach. And that means talking with you. It's not just about you sitting there and just trying to absorb as much information as possible. So if you have a question, if something confuses you, ask it. Raise your hand. Of course, still be polite about it, but if you wait until, say, the end of class, you'll probably forget to ask the question, period. Or if you wait until the end of class, it might not make sense to you anymore, what you were trying to ask. Or you might not remember the question in its entirety. So again, I just encourage you, when you're taking notes, be an active participant. When you are learning, it requires you to also be involved in that process.
Study tips. So guys, always do the homework. Depending on your class, I know for what math and college algebra, it's always required. But if it's not required, if your instructor has maybe some worksheets or practice, do them anyway. It's to help you for your exams. Also read. Every class we know for sure has a textbook. I know a lot of times we only refer to it maybe for a test or maybe for that just to a particular assignment, or some of us don't even use them at all. We prefer to use Google. Read the chapter. And when you do, look at the subject head, even the captions under the pictures. Everything's relevant in the chapter, especially the information that's in bold print. This will give you an idea of the key concepts. When you're taking notes, underline, highlight the main ideas. And as we even stated with the taking notes, rephrase a paragraph that you find hard to understand. When you're writing a definition or even notes verbatim as what you just saw, it's always a good idea to rewrite it in your own words, so that and making it simpler in the ways that you can understand. I'm a fan of a dictionary and a thesaurus. So if there is a difficult word or concept in there, use a dictionary to help you simplify that so you can have a better understanding of what that whole term means. Summaries in all your chapters, very important. Read them. They outline all the major points that were covered in the entire chapter. And you may even come across some information that you didn't even pay attention to, that was something new in that summary. If you do, go back and reread that section of the chapter. Also, at the end of your chapter, I know with the psychology books, we do have application questions. What you should do is look over the end of your chapter questions, try to complete them. Most of them have the answers that are listed at the back of the book, but try to answer these questions. The more you are prepared, the more you learn the material, the better you will understand the information. Review all of this information in your chapter. Again, the more familiar you are with it, the more it won't be a foreign concept when you take your exam. Next slide, please. Concentrate on what you know. And also, guys, get your sleep. Studies show that people who don't get enough sleep, you either forget what you recently learned faster, and you have more trouble also recalling information later. Next slide, please. Relax. You got to take time to do that. Use all those breaks that you do to unwind if you're stressed out. You're not learning. So when it comes to some strategies to help you study better, one is flashcards. This would actually probably be a bit time consuming, but it would be worth it. Index cards, note cards, or just even regular notebook paper. On the front, you will put your term or your concept. On the back of it, the definition. And this way you can quiz yourself. This is just a good method to memorize things. Also, if you are a fan of Quizlet, I do know there are a lot of flashcards used on that website as well. Next is rewriting your notes. I am a fan of this. Now, some students don't tend to write notes because of the PowerPoint lectures, but I encourage you to always still take notes. And when you rewrite them, there's no way you can write down every single thing the instructor says exactly the way they say it. So you're going to rewrite them again in your own words in a manner that makes sense to you. Find something, make a connection. And with that in mind, Mr. Holman is going to tell you how to do that with.
Right. So mnemonics is a big fancy word that is really just about making connections of some kind. You see here, we've got an example of grizzly bears don't fly airplanes as a way to remember, the minor chord music notes and stuff. But there's lots of ways that we can remember things. You maybe remember PEMDAS, right? It's that classic way of remembering the order of operations in math. That's a mnemonic. So these are just little tricks that we can use, little acronyms to help us to remember certain things. We also can use jingles. And here we have a jingle that I learned when I was in school for the quadratic equation. It's called the quadratic formula song. And this is just where you make a song so that it burns in your head. This is something that really works well for auditory learners. For example, the quadratic equation song is just sung to like Frere Jacques. So it's a negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac b squared minus 4ac over 2a over 2a. So as simple and as dumb as that sounds, I promise you, when I was a kid in class and I'm taking the test and I'm thinking, oh God, I got to remember this huge formula. What am I going to do? And then I suddenly remembered the tune and I was just humming to myself. And I remembered it. These are little tricks that we can do to manipulate our brains. So it's really good. And then another favorite of mine is chunking. So this is a trick where we can chunk different ideas to make them just smaller groups. So for example, look at this little number here. Which number is easier to remember, to memorize? Is it 3,129,823,812? Or is it 312,982,3812? So, right, it's absolutely going to be that second one, because we are able to make chunks. We went from trying to remember all of these numbers individually to just remembering 3 groups of numbers. And this is something that you can do for all sorts of stuff. You can chunk things into a grocery list so that you can go to the grocery store and you know that you need to get fruit, you need to get vegetables, you need to get bread, you need to get meat. That's 4 chunks, right? Just a simple thing to think about. But in those chunks, you know that you've got under meat to get chicken and pork and some steak. And then under fruit, you know you've got to get apples and bananas and grapes. Under vegetables, you know that you've got to get carrots and eggplants and cabbages. And under, what was the other one? I'll just say it was dairy. Under dairy, you've just got to get milk and cheese and yogurt. That's 12 items. but you were able to condense it to 4 to make your life a whole lot easier. So using keywords to remember large groups of information is a great way to help you to perform well in your classes and to keep information in your head. Now, another one that a lot of students love to use, especially in the times, before all that we're going through right now, is a study group. And study groups can be great, but there's one big danger with study groups, and that's that you get with your classmates and you maybe become friends with these classmates, and you find yourself not necessarily studying, but just being social. Remember, you're studying together to actually study. You don't want to get together and be like, oh my God, can you believe what the professor was wearing today? I could not. It was so funny. Next thing you know, you're just gossiping and you're not actually having a chance to remember this information together. So that is something to remember with study groups. That they're not always helpful if you're not using them right. Another big thing to think about with studying, with just being a student in general, is stress. A little stress is good. It pushes you to do better. You think, I've got a deadline, I've got to get this done. However, as we all know, too much of it can be a bad thing. Some people will start making more mistakes because they're stressed out. Other people will just shut down completely and not do anything. And the whole time the clock is ticking. So you might be taking a test, and some of us, because we're looking at that clock and we just keep looking, and then we keep looking, and we keep looking, and we keep looking, that we get nervous, and then we start making more and more errors. Other people, they see that they've only got 10 minutes left, and then they just don't do anything for 10 minutes because they're just so stuck in their head thinking about all the ways that this is going to go bad. So what are some things that we can do to fight stress, to keep it from messing us up when we're taking a test? Well, one of them is through relaxation techniques. So both Miss Ben Walker and myself, we are also trained therapists. And so we use relaxation techniques all day, every day. One of those relaxation techniques that I like to share with people is something called the stop, drop, and roll method. And so for this, what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop sharing for just a second, and hopefully my video will work for us. There I am. Okay. So I'm going to model this for you, and I encourage you at home to do this with me. This is a great little technique so that you can learn to just kind of calm down, and you can use it anytime. So let's say that you are taking a test and you see that you've got 20 minutes before the test is due. You've only got 20 minutes left on it. You're starting to stress out. You feel your heart rate going up. What I want you to do first is to stop. So you stop everything. Stop looking at the test. Stop freaking out. You just tell yourself, stop. And then I want you to drop everything. If you have a pencil in your hand, drop it. If you have anything that you're holding on to, just drop it. Put it in front of you. Drop your head, just like I'm doing. Drop your arms. And now you're gonna roll your head clockwise, starting from the bottom. You're gonna roll it up. And as you roll it up, then you're gonna roll it down. And as your head goes up, I want you to take in a deep breath. And then once your head is at the top, on the way down, let all that air out. I call it dragon breath. And sometimes you got to make it a little funny. You just go, you just breathe it in, just. Breathe it in as your head goes up. Breathe it out. And as you're doing this, you probably can feel your body changing. You can feel the stress kind of flowing away. A lot of times what happens is that anxiety grabs us, it holds on to us, and then we let it take the driver's seat. So the first thing that we have to do is stop to interrupt anxiety, to keep it from controlling us. And then we just take a pause to reset and breathe. This is a physical thing that we can do to control something that's happening in our head. So the next time that you're in a test and you start to freak out and you see that the clock is ticking, you're gonna, oh God, I've only got 10 minutes left. What am I gonna do? Oh, I'm gonna fail, and then I'm not gonna be able to get my degree, and then I'm not gonna be able to do my job, all this other stuff. I just want you to take a moment, pause, and go, nope, I'm gonna stop. Stop thinking this way. Right, stop, drop, and roll, he said. Breathe in, breathe out. And watch. It might just work. It might help you a little bit. All right, so what else can we do? Well, we can also control our negative self-talk. When we are taking a test, when we're struggling on something, a lot of times we start to feel like it's impossible. There's no way that I can do this. There's no way that I can pass this class. The teacher hates me. This stuff is too hard. I should have studied more, on and on and on. I want you to imagine that every time you do that, you are adding a brick onto a backpack that you're carrying. And so for every negative thing that you say to yourself, you are adding extra weight. And that's going to slow you down. It's also going to make it more difficult to keep moving forward, because all you can do is think about what's happening to you. What you can do instead, though, is practice positive self-talk. Every time you get a thought that says, I can't do this, counter it with, I can do this. I did study enough. I will be okay. Maybe I'll take advantage of some of that extra credit, like I know some of you are doing today. And then apply the power of positive thinking. Do this in every aspect of your life that you can. It's all about looking at yourself and thinking, I am good at this. I am good. You know, so many times with, say, humor, when we want to make jokes, we make jokes at the expense of ourselves. And we say, well, I'm just dumb, or I suck at math. But when we do that, we are being bullies to ourselves. So it's important to be kind to ourselves. It starts with us. And when we're kind to ourselves, that increases our confidence, which then allows us to do better at all of these hard things. You've already done the hardest thing by being in school. So let's give ourselves a little credit and be better moving forward.
Okay, so time management, that is actually one of the reasons we don't do well, one of the reasons that we don't do well on exams. So one of the biggest stressors that we found for students is timed exams. That can be a lot of pressure and kind of stress you out. So how to make the most of your time is have your notes organized and ready for use if you can use your notes on your exams. If you're in one of our psychology courses, you are aware that our exams are open notes, open book. So have your notes open, organized, even have them labeled per chapter so you can know what to find, what you need. Create a dump sheet. That's just vital information so you don't forget. Be prepared to write this down on the back of the test or a blank piece of paper. Actually, we won't be able to do this virtually, but you get the idea. If you can preview the test, I know I always tell my students what type of questions to expect. If it's multiple choice, if it's true, false, fill in the blank essay, how long it is, how many questions. This kind of gives you an idea of how to prepare for it. create a test schedule. So determine how many questions there are and how much time you have, how much time you can allot for each question. And just kind of have that in the back of your mind. Answer the easy questions first. You know those, get those out of the way. Answer the difficult questions after that. And the hardest ones, even after that. And if you just are drawing a blank, don't ever leave a question unanswered. Give it a guess. I mean, attempting to answer is better than not having one at all. So you're guaranteed to get, a blank question wrong, but you have a small chance of getting one right if at least you try. Try to guess. Next slide, please. Use all of your time. There have been some instances where I've looked at time tests and there have been maybe 10, 15, 20 minutes left. And I'm like, why didn't that student utilize all of that time? If you have 2 hours for an exam, use all of those 2 hours. If you've completed it, go back and check some that you weren't quite sure about. Well, I wasn't sure. I have a few minutes. Let me just go double check. Use all of the time. You have it. Why not? Next slide. So I think we're coming to a close. So in order to be a great college student knows when to study, they know where to study, how to take notes, they know what to do to complete their homework, and they know why it's important to be a great test taker. So I noticed that we did have a long list of questions, but also guys too, I sent an email out to my students and every student should have gotten one, but we do have an online tutoring lab. And this is actually listed also on the Lanier Tech homepage. And if I'm not mistaken, Mr. Holman, you do have to register before enrolling on online tutoring?
Yes, that's correct. So because of the current situation that we are all in, we obviously can't just walk on campus anymore. But that'll change soon, I'm sure. But what you can do is do kind of like what we're doing right now, but through a virtual classroom. And you just have to schedule a time. So these are the times that our tutors are available in each of the subjects that we have. And in order to secure a time slot, you just go to laniertech.edu/tutoring. And there are instructions on that webpage in order to register. And there's a video, there's a PDF that you can look at that will help you so that you can get with a tutor and get better. Maybe, for example, you're in a psychology class and you're worried about APA format. Guess what? Our writing tutors know how to help you with that. So I strongly recommend that you take advantage of our tutoring center because they can really, really help you. If you are a student, then you are good to go with tutoring. You don't have to do any kind of extra stuff. Okay, and that is it for our Lunch and Learn. So thank you so much for coming. This has been a little bit of an experiment for all of us to make this a virtual atmosphere. If you still have questions, feel free to stick around to the end, and we're going to answer some of those questions for you. If you are referring to the extra credit questions, that's going to be in the course. So that's more specific for Ms. Walker and I's particular classes and so our students. So that will help you to get those points. But anyone else that had questions for us that we said we'd answer, now is going to be the time when we can answer those questions. So just if you would, remind us that you had a question for us because that was quite a bit up, and we will do what we can for you.
There was a long question posted earlier. Trying to find that.
Here you go. Yeah, Emily had one. Okay, so Emily says, I wish there was a little more guidance on how to do these things when in this online learning situation. It can make it really difficult to verbally process with your professor when there's only so much time to get through the material. Is there any advice on how to do this better for those of us who do learn by processing out loud or talking things through? Ms. Binwalker, what do you think?
Okay. I will agree with Emily. This platform is not only challenging to students, also to instructors. But I can't speak to all classes, but I do know for most classes, there are videos that are embedded in a lot of the different modules for each chapter. I always encourage my students to watch whatever video is there because it's always going to be put into different words that maybe you will understand. And always make notes of what you don't understand. And as we even stated, even though it's a virtual atmosphere, you should utilize the chat box to type in your question to hopefully get some clarity with that. And always email your instructor for more information. Unfortunately, sometimes there may not be a lot of opportunity for exchange, but again, even in the virtual platform, we do still enjoy questions. Even though we love to talk, it's always wise during each lecture to jot down something that's not clear to you and type it in the chat box for clarity from your instructor during class. And even another student may even chime in because they may have a different take on it. So I just encourage you to try to participate during the class. Use the chat box. You don't have to turn your mic on. And you may be surprised at what another student may even say. I often put out a question during the lecture sometimes, or just ask something and ask students to type in something. But that is in this particular platform, the best way you can do that. And also, depending on your learning style, I've had some other students say, of course, they're visual. I encourage you too to go to YouTube and perhaps just put in the subject matter and maybe watch a few videos. And again, because there's different ways of learning, different ways of understanding. People have different ways of explaining. So kind of look through those. But I encourage you to engage during class because that's going to be the best way for you to understand it. Because if you don't ask a particular question during the lecture, usually an instructor is going to keep going through that material and then she's going to wait, he or she waits to the end for questions. But it's perfectly fine to type a question during the lecture so you can get some engagement. Mr. Holman, you want to add anything?
Yeah, I just want to definitely double down on the idea of emailing your instructors. So even in, especially honestly in online classes, a lot of times students will say, hey, I am in an online class, so that basically means I'm on my own, right? No, you still have an instructor there. You're just not getting class time. But if you are confused about material, send them an email. Say, I was reading through the chapter and I was thinking about this assignment and it's got me really confused and I'm just afraid that I'm not doing it right. Can you give me a little guidance? I do a lot of online classes and I love it when students reach out to me asking for help because that's what we're here for. So don't be afraid to send us messages, even if you're in an online class. So John was also asking us about Quizlet. Is Quizlet okay? And the short answer is, I mean, I can't stop you. But what I will warn you is that it's the internet. So when you are Googling stuff, there is no guarantee that that is the right answer. So
I would like to add about Quizlet. I like Quizlet for a studying tool, just to help with creating flashcards or even reviewing some flashcards that pertains to your subject. I don't recommend it for completing homework assignments or for completing a test. It's where if you've studied and maybe you want to quiz yourself, that's the capacity that I recommend Quizlet for. I don't recommend it to complete homework. Again, that's going to be your chapter, of course, but this is just a good tool to help you study. If you want to try other avenues of trying to remember the information and quizzing yourself or testing yourself, and maybe you just don't know how to start with a flashcard. That could be a site that can help you because there are already some that exist there. Perhaps you can maybe use those to start, or it can give you an idea of how to create your own flashcards.
Okay, it's also been asked if Cisco WebEx is the standard for all classes offered right now. We actually don't use Cisco a whole lot, or WebEx a whole lot other than for meetings and for things like this. Most of us are going to use something called Blackboard Collaborate, and that's because that's built into the course. If you're in a summer class right now, then you probably have experienced this already. So Collaborate is just this virtual online center that we use. We don't use Zoom. I can tell you that no one at Lanier Tech is supposed to be using Zoom. So please let us know if someone is doing that. That is very important that we are not using Zoom. But we usually split between the two right now in this virtual situation. Are there any other questions?
Okay, so I see someone did not see the color of my shirt, and I will say I probably did that quickly. So I'm going to turn my camera on again, and yeah, and you know what? It's so funny. Okay. And for those of you who are in psychology, you'll understand why she asked the question that she did. Aha. Yes, me and Mr. Holman are twins, if you haven't noticed. We're twins today. Oh, thank you, Megan. Okay, there's another question, Mr. Holman. Software.
When you say that recommend for drawings, I'm not sure what you mean for that. Do you mean like in an art class or what exactly? Okay. I'm not sure that we could help you with that one. That's a bit outside of our perspective. So you may want to communicate with some of your instructors where you might need to use electrical drawings, and they can help you with that a little bit better. With that's a bit beyond what we could do. What about imposter syndrome? So for those of you that don't know, imposter syndrome is when you find yourself in a situation where you are in your career, you are in your field, but you feel like you are a fraud. You feel like a big fat faker. And this honestly is something that every single one of us deals with. And the way that you fight it is by reminding yourself, I've come this far. That means that I did all the things that needed to be done that a actual person would have to do. So when you get that degree, when you then find yourself in the field and you start feeling like a faker, just think, I had to get through all of those classes. That means I have earned this and I do deserve to be here. It's part of that fighting negative self-talk I talked about earlier. Any other questions? Okay, so is it better to favor sleep versus studying for exams? I know sleep and studying are both important. but which would be best for the big exam? You don't want to study all night. I can tell you that now. If you study all night, you're going to be exhausted, you're going to be tired, and then when the test comes around, guess what? Studies have shown that you actually lose the information you were studying all night faster. By the time you are working on the test, probably everything that you studied that whole night is going to be gone. So you just wasted your time and tortured yourself for no reason. So I am always going to tell you to go with getting a good night's rest. Schedule the time earlier the day before so that you can study and not feel like you have to stay up all night. Then sleep. And as for what relaxation technique I talked about, well, perhaps if someone else got it, because that was pretty deep into the presentation, so I don't necessarily want to give that away in case you missed it. But maybe if you talk to one of the other people that were here, they might be kind enough to share it with you, but I don't want to give that away. Any other questions? Okay, well, we do actually offer the Aspire network, and I'll put that in the chat room so you can see what that's like. ESPYR. And so you can just search for that on Lanier Tech, and this is a service that is provided for free to our Lanier Tech students. There will be a few conditions that you can just check on, and they will provide counseling. Now, do Miss Ben Walker and I provide counseling? No, that's not a thing that we'll be doing. Let's see. I took college algebra last semester while the coronavirus happened. I found it very hard to learn math virtually. I would study every day, watch videos, and attend online lectures. I think the main problem was that my professor was using his mouse to write numbers and equations, taking pre-calc this fall, and I want to avoid this situation. I know it's a tough time for everyone. How can I tell my professor to improve their equipment? Well, the first thing is don't word it like that, because that's rude as hell. Number two is maybe communicate with them that when they use a mouse, it's not really working for you. Ask them, are there any other ideas that or any other ways that maybe they could try explaining the information to you? But definitely you don't want to say like you have the responsibility to go out and buy a maybe $200 to $300 piece of equipment so that I individually can learn better. That even if they're willing to do it, you want to be professional about it. Even if that is what they do need to do to help you, even if they're willing, it's kinder not to make that demand of them.
I also wanted to add to that point that with the technology, yeah, we were kind of learning this too. So we're open to suggestions, or if you guys find something difficult, please let us know. Otherwise, we won't know what areas that we need to improve on or try to work on. So if you're telling us, well, and I've had a few students to tell me, well, I didn't get that. Well, let's try this. We don't know unless you guys tell us. And as Mr. Holman stated, tone is always good. Think of how you would like someone to speak to you. So just consider that.
Yes. Okay. Any other questions? Well, if nobody has any other questions, it is 10 minutes after when we were expecting to end. So thank you guys so much for attending and for asking your questions. It's been great. And that's it. Thank you all for coming.